Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Mike, host of the free iTunes podcast, Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike, but that's not why I'm here today. This is another Saving Savvy episode, and in this episode, I'm going to ask the important question, or I'm going to maybe answer the important question: how do I shoot my first wedding? Now, this the reason I decided to do this particular video is because of a couple reasons. One was I saw a post where someone said that their friend had asked them if they would shoot their wedding, and the person was asking some basic questions on a forum, and he did get some good responses, but he also got a lot of really negative responses from professional photographers saying things like, "Don't shoot that wedding, you'll regret it," and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, really? They got to be shooting a first wedding at some point in their life. And then I looked at a email that I got today, which is what really got me going. And this is from a famous camera store that sends me lots of emails. And it says, "Are you prepared?" And it says, essential equipment for the beginning wedding photographer. Okay. And what is it recommending? Well, you could buy a Nikon D750 for $2,700, or how about a Canon 5D Mark III for $2,500? Hey, why not go all the way? They're also suggesting the Nikon D4S for $6,000. Could you imagine? Now, of course, these are all awesome cameras, and they would be great as a wedding camera, but if you're a first-time wedding photographer, are you really going to buy a $6,000 camera and then decide you don't want to do that? I don't think so. So I thought I would do this. And so I wanted to tell you two stories about me shooting weddings in the early 2000s. And this is important for you to know because these, again, were friends that asked me to shoot their wedding. And I bought my first DSLR in 2003, and these two weddings occurred before that. So yes, indeed, I shot two weddings with a compact camera. I wasn't even a hobbyist in those days. I basically liked taking pictures. I had a certain eye for composition. People liked my pictures, and so they asked me to shoot their weddings. Well, why? The reason that most people ask amateurs to shoot their weddings: cost. A lot of people can't really afford the expense of a professional photographer. They just can't. And they want some official person to at least get some of the kind of shots that you expect at a wedding. They didn't want to rely on just, Aunt Mabel in the corner taking a few snapshots and getting her thumb in the way. So it's not uncommon for people to ask you to take a wedding shot or do an event shot or shoot or any of that sort of thing. So I'm going to tell you the kinds of things that you should think of before you accept and after you accept this really great honor. So to learn how to shoot a wedding, you have to learn how to P, or PEE. So what does that stand for? P is for plan, E is for experiment, and the other E is for explore and examine. So we're going to start out with that last E first, explore and examine. You should actually explore and examine your own self. Do you feel comfortable doing this? Do you want to be working a wedding that maybe you could be enjoying? Certainly you can't be drinking and dancing and taking pictures at the same time. At least you can't take any kind of decent pictures. You also want to talk to the bride and probably the groom too. You need to let them know that you're not a professional, that you will do your best if you take this job on, but it may or may not work out. And they have to accept that. Now, the fact is that they certainly they'll get photographs, and they'll get probably some nice photographs if you take your time, but maybe you'll miss a shot or two that they want, or maybe the wedding cake or whatever, and so they have to accept that. So if you explore and examine and everything is okay, then you have to move on to the PE part, which is plan and experiment, and that's actually the most important part. So I listed some stuff because I always forget when I write stuff or when I think of stuff. I finish my videos and I go, "Oh, I should have said that." So I wrote some stuff down. So the first thing that you should do is do you know your camera? And what I mean by that is no matter what camera that you have, there are settings in that camera that will improve your photography. Whether that's a point and shoot camera or whether that's a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. And the two most basic things that you need to know how to do is to do exposure compensation and flash compensation. So exposure compensation, if someone is backlit and you want to make them look brighter so you can actually see their face, and flash compensation, because many times when you take a flash, it's too much and you wash everything out. You need how to turn those things down. Now, of course, you should know other things on your camera too, but at least those two basic things. If you're going to shoot in a different mode, like aperture priority, which a lot of people do at weddings, or even full manual, then you better know your camera pretty well. If you really are pretty inexperienced, well, you shoot in auto, and that's going to figure out most things for you. This is not the time to, for instance, shoot just in RAW when you've never done that before. So know your camera, but at least know some basic settings. Do you know your shots? So when I did my weddings, I thought to myself, holy cow, what pictures should I take? And the way that I found out what pictures I should take is I looked at my own wedding album. And I actually wrote on a card, shot with bride and groom, shot with bridegroom and officiant, bridal party, wedding cake, ring picture, etc. And I did them in the sequence that they happened, and I pretty much followed that card when I shot those two early weddings in my career, if you want to put it that way. And that way I knew that I wasn't going to miss the shots. I also did a lot of chimping, which in other words, I would take the picture and look, and if it didn't look right, I took it again, because it's pretty, people are willing to stand around for a couple shots, not 20 shots, but they'll stand around for 2 or 3 shots if they know they're going to get a better picture. Do you know your environment? And by that, what I mean is, are you going to be shooting in a dark church? Is this going to be a nice, airy thing under diffuse light, like under some sort of a tent or something? You need to know your environment, because you need to then adjust around that environment. So let's say you're shooting in a church. Well, will the officiant let you use a flash? Do you have to be in the back of the church? If you're in the back of the church and you can't use a flash and the church is dark, don't expect a lot of good pictures, even with an expensive camera. However, you can talk to the officiant and find out, hey, I can't shoot during the service, but can I take a few flash pictures with you and the bride and the groom before or after the service? And many times they're going to say, well, sure, I just don't want my service disturbed. If that's blocked, you definitely want to find areas around the church, maybe in a little garden that's next to the church, that has good diffuse lighting at the time of day that you're going to shoot the wedding, and have some pictures taken out there. With nice diffuse lighting, you're not going to have to use a flash. Really very, very flattering, and the pictures will turn out well. And so, of course, you want to check the location at the time of day that you're going to be shooting. You want to ask the officiant, and you want to maybe do some practicing of shots before the event happens, just so you know. And write that on the card too, like, okay, use aperture priority, aperture wide open, or whatever, so you make sure that you get the shot that you want. The other question is do you know how to use even a simple photo editor? So when I shot in the early 2000s these 2 weddings, of course I was using a compact camera. People had red eye. Sometimes the camera was a little, I can't get a straight line on a camera, so they're always a little crooked, like 2 degrees. And so even using a simple photo editor with JPEGs, I was able to correct all those problems and vastly improve my shots. And I think in the day I was using something called Microsoft Picture It, which was a very, very simple photo editor, but it did the job. Here again, if you're talking about shooting RAW, if you understand RAW, this might be a time to use it, because if you're in a mixed light setting like a church, you're going to have a lot more control over the white balance, maybe a better control over noise and things like that. But if you've never shot RAW before, then either just shoot in JPEG or maybe a combination of JPEG and RAW. You probably just use the JPEGs. Do you know that you can rent equipment? So when I was reading this post, a lot of people were saying that you can rent lenses and you can rent cameras and maybe rent a better camera and all this stuff. I would not advise you to rent a different camera that you're not familiar with. Usually rentals are for a day or 3 days or so, and I'm sure you can rent it for longer, but it's going to be a lot more expensive. You're never going to get a good feeling for that camera in a day, or you certainly don't want to go and start shooting with a camera that you never shot with at an important event. However, if you do have an interchangeable lens camera of some sort, you may consider a fast lens or a fast telephoto lens, and maybe renting is the way to go. And you might even say to the bride, hey, are you willing to pay for a rental if it means better pictures? Certainly a lot cheaper than a professional photographer. So the typical lenses that people will get will be like a 70 to 200 f2.8 rental. But if you can't do that, then you make the best with what you have. Do you know that you can deliver the product in a lot of ways? So in those early times, that was the era of the CD. And so what I did was I actually made a music video of prime shots that I took, and then I took all of the usable shots, and believe you me, I threw out shots that looked horrible, but I put all the usable shots in a folder in JPEG form, which they could then print up as they chose, and I burnt it onto a CD and gave it to them. Now, you could certainly do that on a flash drive, or there's lots of services where you can print up a nice wedding book or any kind of a book. That's going to cost you a lot of money, so here again, and a lot more work, ask the bride and the groom, are they willing to pay for this? If you're feeling very generous, this could be your wedding gift. I mean, you're giving them a day of photography, you're spending a lot of time editing these photos, and then you're going to pay for a basic wedding book and then maybe give them the rest of the photographs on a flash drive or something. It's a pretty nice gift, really. So you could do that too. Do you know that you can buy extras? So I think, unless this is a justice of the peace 20-minute or 50-minute wedding where they just want a few shots, there probably are a few things that you do want to buy if you don't have them. And I would say things that you'd want to buy would be maybe an extra battery, just in case, and an extra SD card or compact flash card, whatever you use, just in case. And the reason that I would suggest these things is because they're very inexpensive. You'll use them in the future anyways, and you really want a little bit of a fail-safe. And of course, you want to make sure that you charge your batteries before the wedding so that you're all ready and you have those backups and they're not just dead when you need them. Do you know that you can also buy expensive things? So I would never suggest that you would go out and buy a $300 flash for one event or buy a $1,500 lens for one event. But if you've always wanted to get that really fast telephoto lens, or if you wanted to get a speed light, this could be the opportunity to do that. But of course, practice with that equipment before you actually take it to the wedding. This would be in lieu, of course, of renting something or just using your existing equipment. And really, I just want to end with practice, 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 experiment, 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 go to your environment, all those things I just told you, really do that, and I guarantee that you're going to get some nice shots. The other thing is, as the official photographer, you can't be intrusive, but you absolutely can direct the people. So you can say, for instance, okay, I want this person here and this person there because it looks better. Or, okay, everyone, stop talking. I need 5 minutes to take a picture of the bridal party, or that sort of thing. So you get the pictures that these people are going to want later. The reality is, if you've been married, so as I have, you'll know that you remember very little of the wedding because you're so hyped up and everything, but you definitely want to look back at those wedding pictures. So I wanted to finish too with just this idea of you have to have a $6,000 camera to take to shoot a wedding. Again, hey, if you got it, great. But so in the last few months, I've actually had 4 encounters with professional photographers. So some of them used very expensive cameras, but some really didn't. So I was in a newspaper article, and the photographer that shot for that article used a 1DX, very expensive camera, right? I was also recently in a magazine article. That guy was using was it a lady? I can't remember. That person was using a 5D Mark II, not a Mark III, so an older Canon camera. Of course, very good camera. I also was in something else where they wanted to take a few shots. It was like a web thing, and that was a professional photographer. He was using a Nikon D7000. Perfectly fine camera, but it's a APS-C style camera, and since then there's been the 7100 and the 7200. He wasn't embarrassed at all because he had a great camera. And lastly, I went to a rural wedding, and at that wedding in a smaller town, the photographer, who was a professional photographer, was using a consumer grade Nikon camera, like a 5000 series Nikon camera. Again, the pictures turned out fine. So these were 4 professionals, each varying in the level of camera that they were using, going from a very expensive Canon camera all the way down to a consumer level Nikon camera. They all did a great job. So don't get intimidated or feel that you have to go out and buy a $6,000 camera, but follow my P rules, P-E-E. Take care, everyone. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you like my channel, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe. And if you get some time, please give my absolutely free audio podcast to listen. It's called Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike. You can find it on iTunes and other pod-catching sites. Take care.